In today's video, we're in the beautiful city of Chester and we're comparing the DJI Air 3S versus the DJI Mavic 4 Pro. Instead of the usual gear reviewer sat behind a desk, we have professional drone pilot Alex rigging us back on the channel. I bought the Air 3S myself and Alex bought the Mavic 4 Pro himself, so he's going to try and persuade me to spend yet more money on drones. Alex, we both like the Air 3S overall, but now and again we've noticed some Moire issues. It'd be really interesting to take it to the spots where I've had those problems and test it against the Mavic 4 Pro. In our tests, the Moire wasn't actually too bad this time round on the Air 3S. We flip the drones around the other way, and if we crop in, we do see more Moire on the Air 3S than the Mavic 4 Pro. I will also say that Alex hasn't reported any Moire issues to me so far in a batch of shots, whereas it was probably between 5 to 10% of the videos we've had on the Air 3S noticed some Moire and some artifacts. Okay, let's fly both drones at the exact same moment. They'll be slightly different altitudes, so it's slightly harder to tell with, of course, the different field of view. Can you guess which is the Air 3S and the Mavic 4 Pro? Drone A or drone B? Let me know in the comments. So drone A was the Mavic 4 Pro and drone B was the Air 3S. Let me know if you could tell the difference. For the side-by-sides, both drones are set at -2 sharpness, -2 noise reduction, with manual white balance of 5700 Kelvin. Let's start with D-Log M on both drones. We'll look at D-Log in a second on the Mavic 4 Pro. You'll of course notice the different field of view, which can be an advantage for the Air 3S. Now, I wasn't planning on shooting myself for this, as you'll see I'm out of focus. I was just syncing the cameras up. But I think it's worth noting that the skin tones on the Air 3S, I look like I've been drinking. I look like I've been out having a daytime session. As we go to the Mavic 4 Pro, far more natural skin tones. Now, you can fix this. If we open up the hue saturation curves, we can use the dropper tool, desaturate the reds in my face. With the 70mm, both lenses have the same sensor size, but the Mavic 4 Pro, I think because of the higher bitrate, beats the Air 3S. This is a reminder to go and sign the bloody petition in the description. There's an incredible drone layer with the Air 3S, it's just that DJI haven't unlocked its potential. With D-Log on the Mavic 4 Pro, which isn't available on the Air 3S, it does take longer to colour correct, but it does give more flexibility with colour grading, and this can be especially important if you want to create a look. I think this is where the Mavic 4 Pro gets into its own if you're getting into commercial, especially having more accurate skin tones as we saw before.
Both 70mm at the moment, very, very obvious differences.
In low light, Of course, we can expect an advantage to the MAVIC 4 Pro on its main camera, given that it's a larger sensor size. However, both drones in this very dark environment do have video noise. The MAVIC 4 Pro cleans up very well with neat noise reduction. It does outperform the Air 3S and more detail on the image as we'd expect. Of course, the MAVIC 4 Pro has several other advantages. It has the extra lens on top of the 70mm. I've had to often use some stabilisation with it, even with a fairly still day, you're just asking more of the drone. I will say though with Final Cut Pro that it seems to adapt very well to this type of footage with the stabilisation.
ND filter or not, this is exactly the environment where you would love a MAVIC 4 Pro, because tough lighting environment which changes so quickly depending on the direction of your drone. Also reminds me of Legend of Zelda shooting in a forest. Until you crash your drone, and then I realised I'm probably better at Zelda than I am at drone flying. The MAVIC 4 Pro, it's surprisingly quiet for a large drone. I would say it's about equal actually, but it does draw more attention. I've noticed we've been taking some shots. We don't really want to capture people in it, but they're like gawping, and they don't stop staring. You know, if it was a mini drone, they'd probably be like, oh yeah, my cousin's got one of those. With the MAVIC 4 Pro, they just stare. They stare and stare and stare. They've never seen a drone in their lives before. But if you're turning up to a job, of course, the MAVIC 4 Pro is going to create a more professional perception for you. So there's no advantage or disadvantage. You just have to think about your situation, really. I personally, in most situations, because I'm not advertising myself as a drone specialist, prefer the Air 3S. But Alex, the MAVIC 4 Pro is going to be the better choice in that aspect. It's worth noting actually about the price is I was surprised how much the MAVIC 4 Pro was for care refresh. I believe it's about £200 for the year. I'll leave the exact amount below. £200 for a year, that's quite significant. So, but do factor that in mind as well. You know, it's not just the straight up cost of the drone. I think it's important to note that even though the MAVIC 4 Pro is the flagship drone, it generally is the superior drone. This does have some advantages. The major one I would say is the wider angle of the main camera. 24mm, whereas it's 28mm on the MAVIC 4 Pro. Let's say you want to do real estate, just not going to capture so much in your shots. And I did some shots over there. I was passing quickly through the trees on the Air 3S. Now, it'll still look good on the MAVIC 4 Pro, but it doesn't look quite as dynamic with a narrower field of view. As a videographer, I've got to worry about quite a lot of gear. Let's say I'm doing an interview, I've got to worry about tripods, lighting, audio, all these things. Actually bringing a drone sometimes can be a little bit of a, do I do it? And if I only had a MAVIC 4 Pro, I would probably talk myself out of it in some situations. The Mini is very good for this. It's almost like just carrying a lens, but sometimes the wind can be an issue with that. This is quite a nice balance, and I have brought it along to interviews sometimes and found it very useful in getting establishing shots. I'm glad I got the Air 3S. I've used it a lot over the summer. I got it at a much better price, and it allowed me to budget in other areas of the documentary that I'm working on. But the main reason was the flight restrictions. Where I could fly this was easier to fly than the MAVIC 4 Pro. However, the rules are changing in the UK in January. So, although I'm glad I bought this and I don't regret my decision, if I were to be making the decision, especially towards the end of this year, I think the MAVIC 4 Pro would be more tempting. Now, a couple of important points to note before we wrap up the video. The Mini 5 Pro, I'm sure some of you guys will also be thinking about that. I have got a video on its way, I'm in the edit of it, of the Mini 5 Pro versus the Mini 4 Pro. I'm still deciding myself whether to get it. So a bit like today, it's a try before you buy review, which I think's hopefully interesting. Sad point to note, I don't know why I'm smiling for this, let's get a serious face. RIP Alex's MAVIC 4 Pro, which we saw in the review. Unfortunately, he had a crash and just clipped a tree branch. Very interesting, the surface though. A mini drone, I'm pretty sure, would survive a crash as long as it wasn't super high. Most times, in my experience, a Mini Pro survives a crash on soil, leaves. Factor that in mind. Okay, this comes on to my next point. If you're still on the fence between the Air 3S and the MAVIC 4 Pro, what I would strongly advise you to do is, this is what I do anyway, write a list of where you are planning on flying in the next 12 months. Forget about the drone influencer who's off in Iceland, in front of a waterfall, the bloody posers. No hate on those guys. But what were you going to shoot? Okay, what were you actually going to shoot? Write that list down. Then when you've done that, bear that in mind, and let's go back to the strengths and weaknesses that we've covered today. Start with the Air 3S. How important to you is the price? The lower price compared to the MAVIC 4 Pro. Give that a score out of 10. Work your way down this list. Then go over to the MAVIC 4 Pro. How important is the 6K? For me, it's probably only a 2 out of 10. I'm good with 4K. Now, there's a couple of additional things that you might want to add on to this on the MAVIC 4 Pro. True vertical shooting. Do be aware with that though, that it doesn't give you the full tilt. A lot of people have complained about that when they've received the drone. The spin shot mode, to me that's just kind of a gimmick. Longer battery life, it is important to some people, but I've always been impressed with the battery on the Air 3S, so it's not a huge factor to me. But you might want to add those on, okay? Then when you've got a total, you can come to an objective decision, hopefully, about which is the best drone for you, not which is the best drone for the gear influencer who's given them by DJI anyway.
Cause I'm a drone shill, baby, and it's going alright. Dropping loot packs on the timeline, make the sky extra bright. Got a cheat sheet in my pocket, shortcuts taped to the drone. If you're editing for hours, you're just doing it wrong. I'm a drone shell, baby, every brand on speed dial. Cashing coupon sponsorships for miles and miles.